The growing frustration with robotaxis in San Francisco. It seems they're causing major problems at emergency scenes, as well as with fire trucks and police cars. One person who's fed up with this is San Francisco Fire Chief Janine Nicholson. She joins us now live. Chief, thanks for joining us. What are the biggest concerns that you have about these driverless taxis?
So the biggest concern is that someone is going to get really severely injured or killed because we cannot properly respond to an incident, or if they get in the way at an incident. We've really gotten lucky so far, but it's only a matter of time before something really catastrophic happens.
Yeah, what are some of the things that you've witnessed in San Francisco with these cars?
So they have stopped directly in front of our fire stations, not enabling our fire engines to get out the door to go on a call. They have run over our hoses and got them caught in their axles. They have driven into shooting scenes and fire scenes, and just been a menace in so many ways to the San Francisco Fire Department, our fire engines, trucks, and ambulances.
You know, go for it.
I want to say that I'm not anti-technology. I think there is a way to work this out. I think there's a way to fix it. There's some really smart people out there, but we need them to come to the table with their engineering people and their policy people and work with us so something catastrophic doesn't happen.
Absolutely. You know, state regulators track robotaxi collisions, but not actually traffic flow like you're talking about, like these street blockages. Do you think that needs to change? And if so, do you think that would potentially even impact the state's decision to approve more of these cars?
Yes, I mean, we're tracking them for ourselves and, you know, making reports to the state. But I would also appreciate having a conversation with the state regulators. I know that we have had elected officials from San Francisco do that. But you have to remember that San Francisco is the second most dense city in the country. And for this to just be unleashed on us is really problematic, with the same sort of things in place that would be in place in, say, Sacramento or even a smaller town. This is a very difficult city to drive in the first place, and because of its density and its hills. And so we really need them to understand that.
When you bring up wanting to have a conversation about it, have you even been able to reach or have a conversation with anyone at the state or any of these regulators?
I personally have not, but I know that politicians within the city and county of San Francisco have done so.
So how many calls are you getting related to these cars?
So we get pretty much at least one a day that they are impeding or impeding our operations or our response, or our just parking across the street from fire stations in red zones. So there are all sorts of different incidents that are happening. Again, that may not be really catastrophic, but we are paid in the fire department to plan for the worst, and we can see what could really happen with these vehicles, and it's not good. You know, our members had to break the window of one of these vehicles one time when it was entering a fire scene because we could not get it to stop. So it's and the conversations we have had with the companies have basically been, they have trained us on maybe how to operate these vehicles, if there's a car accident with them, et cetera. But we don't really have time to get in and operate these vehicles when we're responding to our 160,000 plus calls a year in the fire department.
Are there more days of the week or times of the day that you're noticing more issues, that more of these cars are out on the road?
You know, it's they're on the road 24/7 now, it feels like. We are having most of the incidents during the daytime hours when people are up and out.
And you touched on this. Nobody, thankfully, has died yet from one of these driverless cars. But are you concerned? I mean, are you at a point where you think that's going to happen, that that's the direction things are going if things stay the same?
If these vehicles are not, if if something is not fixed, yes. And I'll give you an example why. A fire can double in size in a minute. If they are blocking our street, we can't get down the street to get to a fire, and we have to go all the way around the block. That's, another minute. And so whether it's a fire, whether it is a medical call, I tell people, hold your breath for another minute. We'll be there.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I think there really could be serious ramifications, and it's my job as the fire chief to ensure that doesn't happen. And we just need the cooperation from these autonomous vehicle companies, and we've not gotten that yet.
So do you see on the flip side here any long-term benefits to these driverless cars from a safety perspective?
Obviously there won't be drunk drivers and the like, right? But right now, not having a person in the vehicle to move it when it needs to be moved is really problematic for us. And having them just drive into emergency scenes, really problematic. I think that when they get the technology right, I think they can be safer. The technology is not there yet. It's not ready for prime time.
Yeah. The Utilities Commission, as you know, is set to vote on robotaxi expansion next week. What is your message to them ahead of that vote?
My message to them is talk to those of us that are on the ground, first responders, and help us get the autonomous vehicle companies to the table to fix this before they unleash all of these vehicles on our city. That's what I would say to them.
Yeah, and what's next for you and this and as you try to raise awareness about this?
Well, I'm speaking to several media outlets today, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that. I will continue to raise awareness with our elected officials, with San Francisco MTA, in terms of the challenges and what the problems are. But we really would like to sit down with these companies and come up with a solution. The fire department is very solution oriented. We want to fix it. We want to fix things. We want to get things right. And if they would come to the table, I really believe we can do that.
All right. Well, San Francisco Fire Chief Janine Nicholson, thank you for joining us and for raising awareness about this. We appreciate it.
Thank you.